morning to you. I'm Alison Pask, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this webinar today with our guest, Dave Munro. Dave, as many of you will know, is the Chief Advisor for Food and Nutrition at the Heart Foundation, and today he's sharing details on the impact of an intervention to support Year 8 teachers to deliver the food curriculum. This webinar is being recorded and it will be on the ANA website in about a week's time. If you could all make yourself familiar with the Q&A at the bottom of the webinar, ask any questions as we go throughout today, and we'll have an opportunity to answer those questions at the end of today's webinar. So kia ora to you, Dave, and we look forward to hearing more about the evaluation of the food curriculum project.
Yeah, kia ora koutou katoa. Thanks very much, Alison, for having me on the webinar, and thanks everyone for dialing in today. Firstly, I want to say, Alison, well done to you and the team for organising these webinars. I think they're a fantastic platform for keeping the sector informed, but also sharing any new insights and programs and interventions. So well done. I thought today what I'd do is break the session up into three parts. Firstly, give a little bit of background to why the Heart Foundation is working in this space. Secondly, give a few details about the food curriculum project, what we've been doing in the last 2 to 3 years, and then share with you some latest research that we've done on the program, which was completed in partnership with Massey University Dietetic Training Program late last year. So research which is essentially hot off the press. So I'll share my screen now. You can tell me, Alison, if it's working okay. Is it shared?
It's shared. You're a way to go.
Good work. Okay, a little bit of background to why the Heart Foundation's involved in this area. And actually, before I do that, probably important to highlight, I do have a personal passion for developing food skills in children. We have 3 relatively young children. They're growing up ever so fast. So we've got Kate, who's just going into Year 9, Henry, who starts Year 7 this year, and James, who is in Year 4. So, you know, when we're thinking Year 7 and Year 9, that's really, I mean, the program's sort of potentially touching them, and great really to be working on an intervention that potentially my kids will see and be able to use, which is excellent. James, our younger one, we tend to keep him away from sharp objects and fire just at this point, but he will get there, I'm sure. From a professional perspective, the Heart Foundation is involved in this area. I'm very interested in the whole area of food skills and food knowledge in children. We made a conscious decision about 4 years ago to really look at a more holistic approach to food, nutrition, health and wellness. And that meant less of a focus on nutrients and specific foods, and more of a focus on eating patterns, and really looking at things like food skills as mechanisms of people improving the way in which they eat. Also at that time, we retired the TIC program, but wanted to retain elements of industry partnership in various programs that we operate. And so a really valuable and important partner as part of this project is vegetables.co.nz, which is the umbrella organisation which sits over all the vegetable growers and is responsible for marketing and communications of vegetables on behalf of the industry. And that's a really great fit for us, because obviously vegetables are a key part of what we promote through our food and nutrition advice. But the other really important thing here is, if anyone knows Pip Duncan, I'm sure many of us do, she's very well connected throughout the sector. Vegetables.co.nz is also an executive member of HETANZ and New Zealand AIMS, which are really valuable partners to this particular project as well. The other important thing from a Heart Foundation perspective is that we have programs that are very well established in early learning services and schools, particularly primary schools. This particular program is focused at intermediate age children, so it offers a really nice synergy and complement to existing work with schools, and the work of our nutrition advisors throughout the country. And you would, if some of you dialed in last week, you may well have heard Joe Duffy talking about those programs. And finally, I think really important to say here, this is really about developing life skills for children. And so skills that they can carry through their life, and really arm them with the skills of preparing meals within their own time, budget, family and cultural kind of considerations and makeup. And I really like the statement, if you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach a person to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. So that's kind of the metaphor that I often think about with this particular program. So that was rather a lengthy bit of background, and what I thought I'd do now is go to the next screen, if that works. Yes, it works. Okay, so we did some background research back in 2016, which was commissioned by the Heart Foundation and vegetables.co.nz. It was done with Massey University Dietetic Training Program again, so I think we had 11 or 12 dietitians with us for about a 10-week period, and involved 120 intermediate schools throughout the country. Now, what the research found was that only 13% of teachers identified students being able to plan and prepare a complete meal as a key learning objective. That many sweet items and baked items were being prepared in the classroom with very few main meal items. Now, I do have to say here that baking is an important part of actually teaching children. They learn about mixing and measuring and the role of certain technical ingredients such as baking soda and baking powder. But we did see some examples of, if there's a teaching block of 6 to 8 weeks, that it might be brownie 6 times and adjusting different ingredients in a brownie. And from my perspective, I felt that was a bit of a lost opportunity to teach children a range of different techniques and also meal items. There was a clear gap in some of the cooking skills that were being taught, really a lack of things like boiling, grating, mashing, and steaming, and the need for tools and resources to support food teachers. So what we found through that research was that teachers were looking at a lot of different places to get resources, and there was an opportunity to develop some best practice New Zealand-based resources that could support teachers, again in partnership with the teachers. I do really want to point out, it's important to emphasise that through the research we did see lots of examples of teachers doing some fantastic things in the classroom and preparing some fantastic main meals, and that's really been used in terms of going forward with the program and the resources and tools that we've developed. So using those best practice kind of examples to inform what we develop. Okay, so the recommendations from that original piece of research were to develop lesson plans and resources that support teachers to deliver the Year 7 and 8 food technology process. The reason we've positioned this program in Year 7 and 8 is because there is a requirement in the curriculum that all students by the end of Year 8 will receive some form of practical cooking skills. We applied a by teachers for teachers approach to this program. So as I said before, we got those best practice examples from teachers and used that to inform what we developed. And then in the draft stages, we got their feedback and input. So teachers are involved at sort of every step of the design process. When it came to the actual plans and resources, they were designed to teach food preparation and cooking skills, promote the well-being and health aspects of students, be cross-curricular, so tie in numeracy, literacy and science obviously to this, utilise digital technologies. We know a lot is going online and the importance of digital these days. And finally, provide ongoing professional development. And that's something we've done a lot of work on in the past 2 years, holding professional development workshops throughout the country. That's been a great opportunity for teachers to become upskilled. The feedback that we received is teachers don't receive a lot of professional development in this area. But also the other thing we saw was that it provided a fantastic platform for teachers to connect with one another, network, and really learn from one another, which was excellent. Last year we did have to go online with some of them because of COVID, but hoping we can rekindle some of that more face-to-face professional development in the future. So this is the area of the Heart Foundation website where all of our recipes, resources, unit plans associated with the food curriculum project are located. Up the top is a picture of me with Noel Winter, who is the food curriculum teacher at Papitoetoe Intermediate. She's doing some fantastic things in the classroom with the students there. I spent the morning with them and it was just such an amazing experience. Just to really see the passion and enthusiasm of the children for what they were learning and for cooking. The guys particularly were really into it. I don't know if that was because they got to eat what they prepared after it, but it was really great across the board with the students to see the passion and enthusiasm for their learning in this area. So yeah, this is the area of our website, and there's actually a launch video that you can go in and watch, which has some scenes from Papitoetoe Intermediate and tells you a little bit more about the program. Now, just in terms of some of the supporting resources that support the program, in addition to the activities that students and teachers can use, there are a series of recipe videos which really can show students what they're going to prepare in the classroom the next day, and so students can come in and be prepared and see the various steps that they'll be working through. There's skill cards, this one here from Onions, and actually there's actually a range of vegetable skill cards that were produced in partnership not only with vegetables.co.nz but also involving the Health Promotion Agency, and they go through basically the availability of that vegetable, storing, and most importantly preparing that vegetable. So these are not only used in the school setting but importantly are used a lot in the community sort of area in terms of cooking classes that may be held in the community. And finally, we've expanded the food skill cards out to look at other areas such as boiling of eggs and those sorts of things. So just wanted to dive now into the research findings. And we did a follow-up piece of research last year. I think it started in August and went through to sort of November. It involved Massey University dietetic, Masters of Dietetics students. It was a 7-week placement. So we had some students here in pairs, but also some working by themselves. The research goals were firstly to look at the exposure that teachers were giving to planning and preparing a main meal, the cooking skills that they were teaching in the classroom, the types of food items being made in the classroom, and then in terms of the resources that were developed over the past couple of years, looking at the appropriateness of those resources and then also the gaps and opportunities to further support teachers ongoing. Okay, so the survey and the response rate, it was an online survey that was created and it was sent to 400 teachers across New Zealand, and it was really a 5-week period. The response rate was really good, 175 teachers from 165 schools, so we almost got to 50% response rate, so that was excellent, and it was evenly spread across deciles. I'll go into some limitations further down the track, but I do want to highlight that we did send out the survey just prior to the second COVID lockdown. So particularly in Auckland, there are a whole lot of limitations associated with that in terms of getting feedback from the schools, but also with students and their ability to go into the classroom and observe some of the, the things that were actually going on with the students and teachers, which we had in the original research. First area was exposure to planning and preparing a main meal. And what we saw here was 90% of teachers reported that they were giving students exposure to planning and preparing a main meal in their program, which is fantastic to see. We did ask the question slightly differently to what we did in the original research in 2016, but nonetheless, this is a fantastic finding, I think. And this was consistent across low decile and high decile schools. In terms of the categories of foods that were being prepared, and I'll just talk to the pie graph on the right-hand side first. You'll see there about 75% of the food items being taught were main and savoury items, around 20% sweet baking, and then other categories for things like smoothies and drinks, and also breakfast items. The main and savoury items section was made up of things like pizza, vegetable frittata, stir fry, those sorts of things, but also included things like cheese scones and some savoury baking items. Quite a broad category, but there is a bit of blurring of exactly what is a main meal and what isn't. So we grouped a whole lot of items together there. Sweet baking at 20%. As I said earlier on in the presentation, you're still going to have baking and sweet baking making up a proportion of what's taught in the classroom. Again, I think really important techniques there in terms of mixing, measuring, and the functional ingredients of things like baking soda and baking powder that you learn in baking. In terms of the trends and shifts from 2016, there was a 7% increase in main meals and savoury items. We perhaps would have wanted a bigger change there, but I think 7% is still great and gives us a fantastic platform for further growth into the future, and a slight decrease in desserts. In terms of dropping into looking at some specific food items, we saw an increase in the amount of soup that was being prepared in these lessons, sushi, and savoury egg dishes like vegetable frittata, and fewer biscuits, cakes, and scones. So I think pretty good findings here, pretty happy with those. In terms of the food skills that were being taught in 2020 versus 2016, there was an increase in teaching skills associated with preparing a meal. So things like boiling, when we've got frying in there, we're not meaning deep frying, we're meaning shallow frying in a fry pan, and mashing and grating and those sorts of things, steaming. These were things that actually we saw an increase in, which was fantastic. Again, baking and the techniques associated with baking will still make up a proportion of what's taught in the classroom, things about measuring and mixing and those sorts of things. And then the factors when selecting recipes for the classroom. Well, cooking time and cost of ingredients reign supreme in terms of the most significant things considered by teachers. What we did see is that nutrition and culture feature more strongly for teachers in 2020 versus 2016. And that's a great sort of insight and something we can carry forward. We do have a lot of resources built around nutrition and also a lot of recipes to suit different cultural groups. So there's a case of promoting those more, but also building on that work. I think facilities and equipment availability, that is an area that's obviously key for teachers and what they can prepare. But I think important, we can't do a lot to change that. We can in some of the other areas as well, and important insights in developing the resources we develop. And then diving into some of the specific resources, and actually before I go there, a really good finding was of the teachers that we surveyed, the resources were being used by 2/3 of them, 69% from low decile schools, 62% from high decile schools. So that was a really great finding there. Great to see it was slightly higher in low decile. The Year 8 resources were not only being used in Year 8, but also used across Year 7 and Year 9 as well. So there was that spread across different age groups, which was great. The most popular recipe was veg up macaroni cheese. 64% use in low decile, 66% in high decile. And then we dropped down to the most commonly used resources, which were eat most vegetables and fruit, which was one of the activities. Eat Your Colours poster, which is posters that are produced by vegetables.co.nz. Seasonal vegetables flyer, which again is something produced by vegetables. And then a sensory evaluation activity and resource, which was had greater use in high decile schools. So I'll just jump over to showing you some of these resources now. So the Veg Up activity is on the far, Veg Up macaroni cheese activities and recipes on the far left-hand side. The Eat Your Colours posters produced by vegetables are down the bottom. There's some examples there. The seasonal flyer in the middle, and then the other activities over there on the right-hand side. Okay, so jumping into some of the gaps and opportunities moving forward with the program. I think the first area that was identified was to introduce more resources that are digitally interactive, so worksheets, games, quizzes. 41% of teachers expect a shift towards more online and digital learning, and that's particularly been highlighted with COVID over the past 2 years, and the need for teachers to have digitally accessible tools that they can use with their students and send home. Introduce more recipes that cater to common dietary needs, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian and plant-based recipes. We did a professional development workshop last year, and it was actually as I mentioned earlier, had to be held online. One of the components of that workshop was a presentation and a module around different diets. And so we have done a little bit of work there, but I think it's an opportunity to build on that. Further promote the cultural recipes that we currently have, and we do have, you'll see down the side, a selection of those that are appropriate for different cultural groups. But I think there's again another opportunity to build on that work and create more for different cultural groups, Māori, Pacific and Asian cultures. Develop activities which have a cost control, affordability focus, lower cost ingredients, and extending the recipe to feed more people. And that was an insight from particularly lower decile schools. Again, as part of the professional development workshops last year, we did a module on food affordability and that aspect. So I think, again, an opportunity to build on that. Then developing more modern contemporary recipes. So I think we have actually a range of really good recipes in the program, but actually beyond that, Vegetables and the Heart Foundation have on their site some great recipes that can also be looked at and be used as a basis for some of this feedback. I think with some of our recipes, and we've started to do this, look at what we can do in terms of vegetable substitution. So for example, if the recipe calls for spinach and there's not spinach available, but they've got silver beet in the school garden, then that can easily be chopped in and out, or a different herb substituted in, those sorts of things. And then include how recipes can be adapted for different skill levels in the classroom. This was a tricky one for how our program particularly supports this. I think it probably needs to be led by the teacher on a case-by-case basis. I mean, they have the best insight into how that might work, but nonetheless a good insight and opportunity for us to be aware of. So, conclusions. What we've seen through this research is that there's some positive changes happening in the cooking environment since the resources have been launched. The good finding that 90% of teachers are exposing students to planning and preparing a meal. I do want to highlight that, you know, even if it's not a meal, that actually any time a student and a child, I think, spends in the kitchen is about building their confidence and skills, and can only be good. So I want to make that clear. I think, you know, if it starts off with something like biscuits and cakes or muffins and it goes into meals over time, then it's about children having a journey and building that confidence in the kitchen, which I think is important. There's some changes, positive changes in food items that are being taught, and there's a great platform there for encouraging and supporting further change. More factors are being considered when selecting recipes, and particularly nutrition and culture are becoming more important. Our resources are enabling teachers to align lessons to develop personal skills, knowledge and life skills, and that the resources are very appropriate for both low and high decile skills. And then the importance of promoting what we've got currently. I think in some cases teachers were unaware of some of the areas where developed resources, but also really to link with Het Hands in New Zealand aims to further promote, to develop and to work with teachers. And I do want to just highlight the great contribution that Het Hands and AIMS have made to the program. The insight, the expertise and context have been excellent through the process. And really, these were really the key conclusions and insights from the research. So limitations, there are a few limitations with this piece of research, and it probably highlights the importance of doing it again in, say, 3 years' time and seeing what further shifts have been made. The first one was Auckland was placed in level 3 lockdown during the research, so it created real difficulties in following up schools who hadn't completed the survey, and no phone interviews could be carried out. Researchers were not able to enter schools and observe the food technology classes in action, the students, the teachers, and I think that's something that was really valuable for us in the 2016 work and research, and equally not only for the students but for us in terms of giving us insight into what resources and tools we create. So hopefully when we do the research again we are able to do that aspect. And then there were restrictions on promoting the resources at conferences, professional development sessions, and we had to look at webinars and online delivery of those in 2020, last year. So this is the final slide, and it really sums up what we're trying to achieve. And again, it's about developing life skills in children. Again, a great picture of a passionate and enthusiastic bunch of kids that I had the pleasure of spending time with at Papitoetoe Intermediate. And just really want to thank people for dialing in. Again, thank the involvement of Vegetables, which is our key partner here, but also the involvement of Het Hands, New Zealand AIMS, and importantly, teachers who are a key partner in this project. So thanks.
Kia ora, Dave. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful overview, and really appreciate hearing about you teaching eating patterns, which is incredibly important. I love that you're increasing the confidence of children in the kitchen, but I do have to say that the confidence in the kitchen takes a little bit more than teaching in the classroom, and in fact my children have got quite different abilities of confidence in the kitchen, despite having had a lot of input at school and home and flatting and all sorts. And I think some of it comes down to the passion of the child too.
It does. I totally agree. I mean, it is, you raise an interesting point there, Alison. I mean, it's not just with schools to do this. I mean, teachers, parents have a really important role to play and part to play in developing these skills. But I think family structures are quite different now than they used to be. And so there's probably less time spent on this. And so it sort of highlights to me a really important role that schools have and teachers have in developing these skills and actually getting it right in the classroom. And shifting it more to these main meals and those sorts of things. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Alison. It does vary by child. Caden Henry, quite enthusiastic two oldest. Youngest one, probably not so enthusiastic, but will get there with age. He seems to quite like the look of the barbecue and the flames coming up, which, yeah, so he can sort of hold fire on that one.
Yeah, I think we have to tackle all of these from many different angles, and this is just fabulous to see best practice resources introduced in in intermediate schools or year 7 and 8, and the support from the many partners that you've got. There's a question here. There's a couple of comments as well from home economics teachers, and I'll read one out because it gives a really good understanding. This is from Nicola Potts. Nicola says the reason why brownie is made several times with different ingredients is because that's what food technology is: design, make, and alter. Food technology does not necessarily teach nutrition and healthy food, although the brief for the brownie could be to make it healthier. Yep. And she goes on to say that this is the main difference between food technology and home economics, where home economics is nutrition-based, and there's a very common misunderstanding with schools at year 7 and 8 that about having to meet the technology objectives. So any comments on that, Dave?
Oh no, thanks Nicola. That's great comments and insights for everyone to hear. There are two different strands, the food technology strand and also the is, I think it's physical activity and health curriculum. So there's two kind of sets of curriculum, which makes it tricky. And yeah, yes, certainly an opportunity to make things healthier. And what we've done through the resources is try to link them to the curriculum as much as possible and weave in some of those food technology elements. But yeah, Nicola, thank you so much for all your input to this project and also your insights today. That's great.
Thank you. There's another comment along the similar lines from Cynthia Anderson as well. Pippa from Napier thanks you, Dave, and she's particularly great to see the cultural recipes. Have you had any discussions around incorporating cultural values around Kai into the curriculum?
Not at this point. We do need to, I think, an opportunity to do a lot more work in that. We do have a relatively new chief advisor, Māori, who's just joined this organisation in the past 6 to 9 months. So, you know, I think great opportunity to link with Katarina Davis, who's our chief advisor, Māori, and do more work in this space. So, yeah, thanks for your comment.
Thanks.
That's great.
Do you know the percentage of schools that have food technology classes available?
One of the elements with this work that's important to highlight is there is a difference in teaching and more difference in teaching. There's a different style of delivery. There's things called hubs, which a number of schools can travel to. So in Auckland, Selwyn College is a hub that teaches multiple schools in the area, and particularly if you go around the country, there might be a school in a certain place which teaches a whole host of surrounding schools. So that's an important aspect of kind of delivery. And the great thing we saw with our professional development workshop was we had more and more people attending from the hub, hub schools, which actually extends the reach of the program into the community. But don't have the specific figures around the percentages of schools delivering food technology. It is a curriculum requirement, so I imagine, Nicola or Pippa might be better placed to comment on this. There is that curriculum requirement that all schools by the end of year 8 will receive it. So if they don't have it on site, they should be going to a hub and actually getting that training in some form.
Great, thank you. Did the survey gather insights on the kids taking more food preparation, dinner choices or cooking responsibilities at home, or was it just at school?
just at school. It was a survey of the teachers. It didn't involve surveying the students and looking at the home environment at all. But we have had feedback from a number of teachers that the resources are fantastic in terms of connecting back with the family and students taking those recipes home to use. But I don't have any concrete figures on what that looks like.
Excellent. And what about the link to the Garden to Table program? Are there any links there?
We have a link. The Heart Foundation has a link with Garden to Table, and particularly our education programs that we deliver into primary schools and early learning services link closely with Garden to Table. Garden to Table, to my knowledge, is largely primary. This project is more strongly positioned at years 7 and 8, so the intermediate age children. But Garden to Table and the Heart Foundation keep each other very informed of what's going on in both programs and with our work.
I guess there's also an opportunity to link into the environment as well, with composting and bees and all sorts of other programs as well. Is that being considered?
Yeah, it's you could weave in a whole lot of different things into this module or into this program. Certainly, there's just a lot of gaps and opportunities identified in the existing food and nutrition space. But I think more and more, and as I said at the start of the presentation, I think we need to get a lot more holistic and broader in our thinking about food nutrition and start to link and weave in all these other areas. If you look at just general wellness, I mean, the impact of things like sleep and stress and all these other things that connect in with food nutrition. I mean, it's just an example, but yeah, as you've said, Alison, you've got examples of linking in these things like in the environment and that sort of thing as well.
I think the wonderful thing about food and nutrition as well is that it can be linked into all areas of the curriculum. I know when one of my children was younger, they went away on a school camp and they spent their maths that week working out how much milk they would need to take on camp, and that was all quite calculated on working out, measuring the milk they had on their breakfast cereal in the morning and timesing it by the number of children going on camp, by the number of days. And I was just thought it was such a fun way to learn, really, really encouraging to see so much practical experience coming into the curriculum. We have a question here about the free and healthy lunch program in some schools. How is the Heart Foundation working with the lunch team to make the curriculum links and align with classroom learning?
Okay, the free lunches in schools, I'm not sure of the direct link between the free lunches in schools and the curriculum. Obviously, free lunches in schools is a Ministry of Education led initiative. In terms of developing the program ongoing, in terms of the resources and what we deliver under this program, it will be very much led by what the teachers want and need and feedback from HETANZ and New Zealand AIMS on the program. So that will really guide what we develop and how we deliver things.
Excellent.
Necessarily linking it with the Free Food in Schools program.
I think there's so many programs that potentially could be connected with, isn't there? Quite a few comments coming here to thank you, Dave. So thank you on behalf of those people that are commenting. Do you think there are any opportunities to integrate these resources into teacher training?
Oh, gee. I don't know. I know a few teachers. It could be. It could be. I hadn't thought of that. So I think anything's up for grabs, and certainly there may be. Again, it's probably something to chat further with HETANZ and New Zealand AIMS and Teaching Association about. So it's a great comment. Yeah,
really good idea.
Sorry, Elsa, I don't have the answer to all these questions, but they're great comments.
Come on, Dave, you should. All this years of experience, you've got that magic wand, haven't you?
That's right.
Yeah, we all wish we had that, and then we'd do ourselves out of a job, which would be fantastic. From Danny, thanks so much, Dave. Great to hear how the program is progressing. We're keen to understand a little bit about how the program works, how it is promoted to schools to participate, access to PD, support available to the schools. How would she find out more information? Is that something, go to your website?
Yeah, or just give me a call. You've got my, do I give out my details now? You've got my details, I mean.
Yeah.
Or I can circulate my details to participants here and you know, whatever, pick it up from there. But yeah, certainly more than happy to give a rundown of the program and all those questions that were asked there.
Send an email to info@ana.org.nz and we'll put you in touch with Dave, or alternatively go onto the Heart Foundation website and follow the instructions on how to contact somebody. Teacher training, get a half-day good call here. Can these resources be adapted for other year levels, or are they just for 7 and 8, year 7 and 8?
No, they certainly can be used at other year levels. We know of teachers that are using some of the year 7 and even some of the year 8 at year 6 and even at year 9. So certainly teachers have adapted the resources and are using them even without adapting them into those other age groups. So absolutely.
Excellent. Any more questions there? Just a comment from Robin, thanking you for the feedback, and she's looking forward to promoting these great food habits for our future adults of New Zealand. Dave, it's certainly been a pleasure having you here. Your lovely presentation style, very relaxed, very informative, and we thank the Heart Foundation and yourself for leading such a wonderful project that's clearly having an impact on so many children of year 7 and 8. It's great that these resources can be evaluated. It's wonderful to have those students in there to help you and to get that experience as well. So thank you very much for your time today, Dave. And on behalf of everybody here, we wish you a happy year, happy and safe year. Let's hope we don't have to go back into COVID lockdown again. And just a reminder that we have Nikki Bazant back by popular demand next week. She's going to be talking about food photography, getting out those cameras and taking photos of food for your Instagram, your Facebook accounts, or just simply for your own pleasure. So ka kite anō to everybody here, and thank you to Dave.
Thank you.